Part 2. 3 years later. Chapter 1. Do the Right Thing. Late at night, traffic is low on Hammond Drive. Only a few overland trucks or delivery vans on their nightly routes enter or leave the Winslow Industrial Park. A wide security ditch encircles the complex, broken only by the yellow and black striped concrete barriers that guard the entrance road. These security features were installed after the crippling ECOS attack 3 years ago. The surrounding dark expanse in the ditch contrasts sharply with the bright lights inside the park. Eliminating all shadows, the floodlights illuminate a network of giant pipes and ducts. Weaving through a labyrinth of towering storage silos and cooling towers, the pipes look like the veins of some colossal mechanical beast. Bright clouds of steam rise into the air and dissipate in the night skies. The aggressive hum of a security drone rises above the monotonous buzzing of transformer stations and the hissing of pressure release valves. The drone flies past a huge foundation of a storage silo, and its rotors buzz loudly as it turns to patrol the next section of the industrial complex. Just as the drone pivots, a hooded figure darts across an open space in the blind spot of the drone's sensors. In the corner of the concrete foundation, it crouches at the base of a ladder.
Wait there.
The earpiece sounds. After a moment, another drone passes in the distance. They have monitored the drone routes for weeks in a cat and mouse game of surveillance. Time to act now.
They're on the beta route. On go, take the ladder to the second level. Wait at the main cooling pipe. You have 8 seconds.
The small crow figure looks up and fastens his rucksack again, ready to dash up the ladder.
Go.
Taking 2 bars at a time, the crow athletically sprints up the ladder. On the second level, he quickly crouches down, vanishing in the cold steam of a cooling tower. The acrid smell of coolant fumes engulfs him.
Nice. 6 seconds. Better than in the simulation.
The soft voice of the Len in his ear sounds warm and reassuring.
Taryn,
No time now. Next window in 5 seconds. Across the walkway, the maintenance hatch to the power core will open when you approach. Go.
The agile crow sprints across the walkway that connects the cooling tower with the power core. On the other side, a maintenance hatch sighs and unlocks its clamps. Silently, the crow opens the hatch and lets himself down into the darkness of a service duct. Static noise crackles in his earpiece, broken by unintelligible word bits. The power core's emissions start to interfere with their radio signals. The bluish glow from inside the service duct reflects on the crow's face. He slowly stands up for a better radio reception.
come again?
He whispers, pressing both hands against his ears.
Abort! Ray! Get out!
The panic in the Len's voice is palpable. Raylan spots 2 drones heading toward him. He looks down into the hypnotic blue glow of the service duct. Killing the industrial power core would reduce climate gas emissions, even if they eventually repair the core. Raylan makes his decision.
No, we'll never get a chance like that again. I'm going in.
Raylan would have denied another unspoken reason, getting back at his father, Raylan Winslow Sr.
Ray, no!
Static noise crackles in his ear again.
Taryn, trust me, I got this.
Raylan reaches for the hatch and starts to close it above him. Taryn's resigned voice sounds distorted in his ear.
They've got signal. Sorry.
The earpiece crackles one last time. The hum of the security drones gets louder and Raylan realizes that it was a setup. The maintenance hatch was still monitored despite their efforts to isolate its signals. Its release triggered the alarm. Time is running out. A compressed voice calls out from above.
Please identify yourself. You are not allowed on this property without proper authorization. Your arm clip seems inactive. Do you need assistance?
Quickly climbing down the service duct, Raylan grins at the factory preset messages.
Heard that before.
He chuckles, recalling a wild chase with Taryn through the backyards of quiet homes in the Lacoste district. Trying to outrun the cops, they scampered over neatly laid out lawns and perfect flower bed arrangements. A choir of
Do you need assistance?
drone voices in their wake. On the lower level, the bluish light of the power core pulses behind small observation windows. The low hum of the industrial converter fills the whole floor. Raylan feels its vibrations in his bones. He quickly orients himself and runs over to a wall panel. Behind the panel lies a complex net of tubes and high-pressure valves, intricately connected to control the cooling of the power core. Raylan retrieves a small explosive charge from his rucksack and places it behind a set of ducts that seem to vibrate under high pressure, leaving the wall panel open. He rushes back up the service duct. As he opens the maintenance hatch above, two drones hover left and right of the walkway. He raises his arms innocently.
I'm so sorry,
He says,
I got lost during my visitor's tour. And then my arm clip broke as I slipped. And everybody is gone. Can you help me?
Not waiting for an answer, Raylan swiftly walks back across the walkway. Sliding down the ladder, he is followed by the drone's compressed voice.
Please stay in your present location. Assistance is on its way.
The instant Raylan's feet touch the ground, two gloved fists slam into his shoulders, hurling him to the ground. The fall knocks the wind out of him. He feels a knee on his back and someone holding his legs down. Carbon chain links cut into his skin as his hands are tied. Still out of breath, Raylan gets spun around. He looks up into the broad, chubby face of an older crow whose sagging cheeks hang over his retreating jawline. Above and in the distance, a black copter slowly descends, its yellow warning lights flashing.
You should have run, boy,
The guard grunts.
as your little Lynn lover suggested. But don't worry, we'll get her later.
The guard grins at his AMA partner.
Maybe she wants to triple us before we interview her, right?
They forcefully lift Raylan up from the ground as the copter sets down near a storage silo.
Do you hear what I'm saying, boy?
The foul breath of the crow guard leaves Raylan gasping for air. He reeks of curry and old grease, mixed with stale old beer. Behind the guards, two armed crow in riot gear exit the copter, followed by a Len wearing a sweeping coat over a dark two-piece suit.
ATC.
The crow guard spits out each single letter in disgust. His partner agrees,
Crow, they take all the fun out of arresting people.
flanked by the two large crow. The gracile body of the Len appears almost childlike. Nevertheless, her stride and demeanor assert her authority to the fullest as she marches toward the guards. Without greeting, she addresses them both.
Thank you for your good work. You will be commended. We'll take it from here.
The Len's high-pitched voice is enervating yet commanding.
I need a receipt of transfer.
The crow guard grumbles, raising his arm clip.
Of course.
The Len coldly smiles at the guard. As soon as she touches the guard's arm clip, the guards seem to no longer exist to her. Turning around, she orders her escorts.
Activate the electronic shackles and untie these horrid carbon chains.
The Len walks back to the copter without waiting for them as one of her escorts pulls Raylan close and slaps a flexible bracelet around his arm clip. With a push, he motions Raylan toward the copter. Raylan looks down at the bracelet that makes his skin tingle. He has seen these electronic shackles before. If you leave your designated area, the bracelet will release increasingly stronger electrical impulses, a perfidious instrument of prisoner control. Although internationally banned, civil rights activists regularly publish stories about their AI-assisted use in Verloren prison camps.
Of course, the ATC uses them to do the right thing.
Raylan thinks disgusted. The control diode in his bracelet glows in a steady green. Raylan tries to shake off his state of shock as the ATC agents push him towards the copter.
The charge in the power core will go off any second now.
He desperately thinks.
That's 30 seconds of darkness before emergency power kicks in.
Raylan hears the two escorts' grinding footsteps behind him. The Len climbs into the copter and the hum of the copter's engine gets louder as the pilot prepares for takeoff.
If I don't act, I'll end up in the closest ATC holding facility.
He muses.
If I do act, I'll probably fry my brains out. Nice choices.
Raylan grimly concludes.
Choices?
The word echoes through his mind, triggering a long-forgotten memory. Time slows. The yellow warning lights crawl over the concrete ground. Each step takes seconds. The sound of a cheerful young voice chimes through his mind.
More sides, more choices, then I can just choose what I want.
The image of Arya's smile still fills his heart with warmth after all this time.
More choices.
He asks himself, gazing at the copter that is nestled beside a huge concrete foundation.
It's the bracelet control. It must be in the copter.
The warning lights pick up speed again. His steps become faster. Real time is caught up with Raylan. Suddenly, the power core lets out a deafening, clanking noise, like shattering glass. All lights vanish. Darkness engulfs the industrial park. The giant power core sighs one last time in a low descending hum as it automatically shuts down.
Now,
Raylan sprints toward the copter as darkness falls. "Hey!" One of the escorts calls out in surprise. Raylan seems to magically teleport toward the copter as the strobe-like warning lights hit his body in the dark. The Len turns around to see Raylan ducking below the copter's tail, vanishing into the darkness. On the other side of the copter, the AMA pilot opens her hatch and exits with an electrobaton in her hand.
He's on the other side. Get him.
The Len orders her escorts as she steps back out. A bright flash of light erupts behind the copter. Both escorts raise their weapons at the ready.
got him.
A muffled voice behind the copter mumbles. The escort silently motions his partner to secure the nose of the copter, while he slowly rounds the tail, his weapon's flashlight illuminating the dark. Behind the copter, the unconscious body of the pilot lies spread out on the ground. No sight of Raylan. Suddenly, a shrill, whirring noise inside the copter increases rapidly in volume. An ear-piercing scraping noise adds to the cacophony. An electrical baton, innocently lying on the pilot seat, starts to smoke.
Overload!
The Len screams.
Overload! Get back!
Her escorts are already running for cover as the baton explodes in a stunning white flash, immediately setting the copter on fire. As a last resort, the copter's AI floods the interior with foam to keep itself alive.
Find him! Find him now!
The Len screams at the top of her voice, more a wailing banshee cry than an intelligible order. Her cry activates not only the guards and her escorts, but also the 2 security drones. They all quickly fan out into the darkness. It is not clear if out of obedience or just to get out of hearing range. The Len stabs her display.
Yes, I need a full extended traffic lockdown around the Winslow Industrial Park.
She listens briefly, then interrupts.
Yes, of course, Ecos activity. You have the power down on your display, correct?
Again, she waits half a second.
Well, I suggest you get your ass moving and lock down traffic.
She snarls.
I want no one moving in this zone without my knowing it. You can start at Hammond Drive and fan out.
The Len abruptly pauses, reaching for her earpiece.
Cyphron, what are you doing in this line?
She listens intently for a while, getting more irritated by the second.
But I have him. He must still be inside the fence.
She shakes her head incomprehensively and looks up into the night air. In a resigned voice, she acknowledges the orders given to her.
Company policy, right? Special interest, I see. Of course, Cyphron. I will do as instructed.
The Len swipes her display shut and stands in the light of her arm clip, hands on her hips. After a moment's thought, she contacts her escorts.
Get back here,
She says,
the hunt is off. Report to your station.
looking at the smoldering copter. She barks in frustration,
And get me a car.
waiting for her car. She walks toward the burned copter to assess the damage. She scans the scenery and says with determination,
This is not over yet.
Raylan races along the other side of the silo foundation. The pilot was out of his league against Raylan's quickness, and it took him just a swift sidestep to wrestle control of the electrical baton. As he sprints toward the carefully covered extraction point at the fence, bright lights spring back up again. Emergency power has been diverted to the industrial complex.
Hey, you, stop right there.
Glancing over his shoulder, Raylan spots a guard aiming a gun at him from a distance.
Freeze, eco scum. I swear I'll fry you right here if you don't stop.
Raylan hears the telltale pops of an electric stun gun behind him and the whiz of its projectile above his head.
Sending for my head? This bastard really wants to fry me.
Raylan has seen what these electrical charges do to people.
On the other hand, the ATC guys would have fired without warning. Where are they?
The answer to his question comes in a barrage of projectiles that hit the concrete barrier he just hurdled. He launches himself toward a large sheet of carbon fiber that rests against the outer fence, sliding into safety. While more projectiles hit the sheet like angry hornets, Raylan pushes against a series of sham chain links in the fence and squeezes through the opening. His team prepared this exit last week, replacing just enough chain links to make an opening for a small crow to pass through. This extraction route was suggested by their strategic AI.
Thank the gods for good AI.
Raylan thinks gratified. Without looking back, he sprints down the ditch and keeps running into the dark, away from the break in the fence. He finally slows down to catch his breath and crouches down in the dark, surveying the situation. Inside the fence, one of the guards talks into his arm clip. 2 drones hovering left and right above him.
Fry this, asshole.
Raylan thinks to himself. By law, no private security drone is allowed on public property, and the night guard's pay grade is definitely too low for heroic deeds. Raylan is much more concerned about the ATC escorts. He knows that he cannot linger here. The area will be swarmed by patrol cars soon, and the presence of the ATC further complicates matters.
At least they need to order a new copter first.
Raylan grimly reassures himself. He sheds his black coverall and carefully peels of the facial features that protect against facial recognition.
Still, the mission was a failure.
He concedes to himself, pulling his hood up over his head.
How did they know we're coming?
No movement is visible at the fence or at the entrance of the complex. Carefully peering up at the road, he waits for truck lights to pass. Then he jogs across the road, leaving the lights of the industrial park fading behind him. Another set of lights approaches quickly. Raylan throws himself to the ground and tries to hide in the tall grass that covers the sandy ground. With the high-pitched screech of its powerful engine, a black sedan races past and turns to enter the industrial complex. Raylan continues jogging toward the outskirts of the city, mindful of any suspicious traffic. The area is strewn with the remnants of old industrial plants and inactive service stations, perfect to just vanish from sight if needed. Raylan recalls the pickup option for this extraction route at an abandoned charging station. Staying in the dark, he climbs a half wall and jogs over the parking lot of an old car wash. He remembers his father's plans to combine and reactivate the Winslow properties in this area, and how he managed to convince his assistant Cyphron to look at this car wash only to see Aria, the young Amai he just met. Looking over the parking lot of the car wash, he sadly smiles at these memories.
Just 3 years ago, and yet it feels like an eternity.
He muses on the changes his life has taken since then.
Maybe I should have told Aria and Everin about what I really do. Everin would have understood. Heck, we use her paid skills right now. Not so sure.
Raylan frowns at his last memories with Aria and Everin as a triple. He even remembers where Aria stood, leaning against the dark window front of his apartment, holding an empty glass of wine.
Why are you so cold lately?
Aria's last words in their final quarrel ring through his mind. Soon after that night, Aria moved into the dormitory at the university.
I need time to concentrate on my studies, you know.
A half-hearted lie, accepted by both Everin and Raylan as her final goodbye. Maybe it was the right choice for her. Everin told him that Aria is ahead of her class in environmental design and that a brilliant academic future is waiting for her. She also told him that her triple with Aria and Chiron is working out nicely.
Maybe our paths just crossed at the wrong time, Aria.
He thinks sadly of his friend. Her straightforward attitude toward rules and regulations made it hard for Raylan to tell her the truth. Everin's "I don't care" attitude made it much easier for Raylan to keep his secrets. Back then, his new job at Winslow Security showed him the raw nature of the ATC and the callous indifference of its agents. His day-to-day experience on the job pushed him closer and closer to open rebellion, but Raylan did not know how to rebel. Resistance seemed futile. It was Taryn who opened his mind to the overarching fundamental error of his way of life. He had last seen Taryn years ago, a crush from his past. She was pushed aside by his joy of having Aria and Everin, but Taryn always remains in his heart. Raylan never believed the rumors that Taryn works for the Ecos, but he was proven wrong. He nods to himself.
You really opened my eyes, baby. You let me see all the lies that I pushed away.
He vividly recalls their meeting 2 years ago during an ATC inquiry. Taryn impressed him greatly with her stoic composure in the face of aggressive ATC agents. She knew the relevant legal procedures better than her lawyer. True to her Len nature, she let everybody know how weak their case was. And then there were her eyes that seemed to look right through his charade. When they finally let her go free, Taryn took an unwatched moment and whispered into his ear,
Do the right thing.
It took Raylan 10 minutes to pull her file and find out what she does and where she lives. After checking her daily routines, he picked her up one day in a surprise move and took her for a long car ride along the coast. They talked for hours and Taryn made her points in a way that seemed to solve all of Raylan's uncertainties and insecurities. In her world, the ecos were the answer to total annihilation. That day, Raylan offered his unique services without being asked. His information on industry logistics of his father's competitors alone led to many successful missions. For his protection, the Eco's AIs constantly work on detailed time windows and alibis to elude random Winslow security screens. They more or less created a second Raylan Winslow Jr. that could be seamlessly replaced by the real Raylan.
By night one way, by day the other.
He ponders.
But my curse is self-inflicted.
He lets out a deep breath as he turns into a small side street toward an abandoned charging station. In the shadow of a transformer block, he leans against a concrete wall and digs his hands even deeper into his pockets.
This is bigger than all of us.
He convinces himself.
It's more important than Arya, or even me. They just don't understand the urgency.
Taryn's words come to Raylan's mind.
We'll kill our future if we continue. I'd rather live in caves again than let our children burn in a deadly climate.
The night's cold creeps up Raylan's legs. He feels the physical drain his life of double-crossing puts him through. Tomorrow, his daytime persona will represent his father at a charity gala at the city's university, some grant donation or fundraising event. These academic events are all the same. A bunch of self-righteous Len, some ama and crows strewn in for gender equality, all vying to kiss the industry commissions behind. He automatically reaches for his arm clip to check his schedule. Raylan pulls his hand back as if electrocuted. Staring down at his wrist, he realizes that the electronic bracelet is still fixed over his arm clip.
But it's dead, right?
He thinks frantically. Looking closer, he spots the dead diode that was shimmering green earlier. No light.
Yeah, it's dead.
Suddenly, a truck horn sounds in the distance, and another longer honk. The driver is obviously annoyed at something. Looking up, Raylan spots a black sedan driving slowly along the road. He crouches down and tries to recede further into the shadows, unaware that these electronic bracelets can be located by active search. The black car slows down even further and eventually stops at the side of the road. A Len in a dark suit steps out, her coat waving behind her. She checks her arm clip, turning it slowly as if to find the best radio reception. Finally, she looks up and surveys the charging station. She starts walking, her hand reaching under her jacket to pull out a stun gun. Peering out of the shadow, Raylan spots a second set of car lights slow down behind the approaching Len. Instinctively, he braces himself against the concrete wall, looking for a way out. The second car pulls up to the charging station, turning off its headlights as it leaves the highway. Raylan squints his eyes. Something is wrong with this car. In the dark, the frame of the bullish car is but a shadow, seemingly absorbing all light. Its presence is only visible by its shadow. As it silently rolls toward the Len, the lights of a passing truck reveal the characteristic shape of the car. A Cherox Roadmaster. The Len senses a change and spins around, her gun raised. Immediately the car's engine roars loudly, and its massive frame lurches forward. Its headlights suddenly blind the Len, and she furiously lets off 2 blind shots while rolling out of the Cherox's path. The driver's door opens and hits the Len's shoulder, sending her spinning into the air like a puppet. Raylan wanted to use the diversion to sprint away, but now he stares in shock at the motionless Len body lying on the concrete. The driver slams the brakes hard and the car's reverse power feeds let out a deep vibrating hum. The Cherox turns sideways, closing the driver door and simultaneously opening the passenger door on the other side.
Get in now.
A coarse voice commands. Raylan looks over the Cherox's massive hood and watches the Len slowly beginning to move again. He jumps into the car and instantly gets pressed against the seat as the Cherox accelerates in a sharp curve. The AI tries its best to keep the wheels from skidding as the car races past the Len, who slowly comes to her knees. Raylan's hand gets pulled back and the jaws of a bolt cutter bite into his bracelet and arm clip.
Hey, easy, my arm clip.
Raylan warns.
Don't struggle. It has to go.
The driver tells him and looks past him into the side rearview mirror. The Len is still sitting on the ground, holding her head. Raylan looks at the driver. Green welder goggles are fixed over a dark bandana covering her whole head. Her armor chest muscle is only covered by the broad straps of her coverall. Dark braids flow beneath her bandana as she turns to check the traffic. A grunt from the back seat, followed by the grating sound of metal against metal, focuses Raylan's attention back to his wrist. The jaws of the bolt cutter clip through both bracelet and arm clip. The AMA driver rips away the wristwear and opens the driver window.
They'll pick that up later.
She says, throwing the evidence out of the car.
It's too hot now.
Closing the window, she accelerates and looks at Raylan through her green goggles.
We have to get you home, hero.
The driver chuckles. Seeing his slouched, defeated position, she tries to cheer him up.
Ah, come on. You can't win 'em all.
Her partner in the back shifts in his seat and agrees.
Yeah, it was just tough luck. At least we got you out in time.
Right. Thanks for that, by the way.
By now, Raylan has figured out that they belong to the Ecos getaway team for this mission. The last actions have drained the rest of his energy. The surge of adrenaline ebbs away, leaving him stranded with his own thoughts.
I need to talk to Taryn about this.
He was deeply involved in the precautionary measures for this mission. If he learned one thing at Winslow Security, it was the skill to invade and manipulate industrial AI systems. Raylan is still very sure that his setup was flawless. And yet, they somehow knew that he was coming. He does not need an AI to tell him that they may have a mole in their organization. Raylan the terrorist? Really?
Don't judge me.